Elementary Stories for Reproduction by L.A. Hill. Copyright Oxford University Press, London. Number 1. It was 2 weeks before Christmas, and Mrs. Smith was very busy. She bought a lot of Christmas cards to send to her friends and to her husband's friends, and put them on the table in the living room. Then, when her husband came home from work, she said to him, "Here are the Christmas cards for our friends, and here are some stamps, a pen, and our book of addresses. Will you please write the cards while I'm cooking the dinner?" Mr. Smith did not say anything, but walked out of the living room and went to his study. Mrs. Smith was very angry with him, but did not say anything either. Then a minute later he came back with a box full of Christmas cards. All of them had addresses and stamps on them. "These are from last year," he said. "I forgot to post them."
Number 2. Mrs. Jones was waiting for an important telephone call, but she had no bread in the house, so she left the baby at home and said to his 5-year-old brother, "I am going to the shops, Jimmy, and I will be back in a few minutes." While she was out, the telephone rang, and Jimmy answered. "Hello," said a man. "Is your mother there?" "No," answered Jimmy. "Well, when she comes back, say to her Mr. Baker telephoned." "What?" "Mr. Baker. Write it down. B-A-K-E-R. How do you make a B?" "How do I make—" "Listen, little boy. Is there anybody else with you? Any brothers or sisters?" "My brother Billy is here." "Good. I want to talk to him, please." "All right." Jimmy took the telephone to the baby's bed and gave it to Billy. When their mother came back, she asked, "Did anyone telephone?" "Yes," said Jimmy, "a man, but he only wanted to talk to Billy."
Number 3. Nasruddin had an old shed. It had no windows, so it was very dark, and it was full of old things. One day, Nasruddin went into this shed to get a ladder, but slipped on something and fell against a big garden fork. The fork hit him on the head and knocked him down. Then it fell on top of him and hit him hard on the left leg. The ends of the fork then went into his long beard. He fought with the fork fiercely, and at last threw it off him, jumped up, and ran out of the shed. He was very angry. He had an old sword under his bed, and he now ran and got this. Then he ran back to the shed, opened the door suddenly, and shouted in a terrible voice, "All right, come out and fight, you and all the other folks in the world. I'm not afraid of you."
Number 4. A man always went to the same bar at the same time every day and asked for 2 glasses of beer. He drank them and then asked for 2 more. One day the man behind the bar said to him, "Why do you always ask for 2 glasses of beer? Why don't you get 1 big glass instead?" The man answered, "Because I don't like to drink alone. I drink with my friend." But a few days later, the man came in and asked only for 1 beer. "Oh," said the barman, "has your friend died?" "Oh no," said the man, "he's very well. This beer is for him. But I've stopped drinking beer. My doctor doesn't want me to drink anymore because it's dangerous for me."
Number 5. Old Mr. Black loved shooting bears, but his eyes were not good anymore. Several times he nearly shot people instead of bears. So his friends were always very careful when they went out shooting with him. One day, a young friend of his wanted to have a joke. So he got a big piece of white paper and wrote on it in very big letters, "I am not a bear." Then he tied it to his back and went off. His friends saw it and laughed a lot. But it did not save him. After a few minutes, Mr. Black shot at him and knocked his hat off. The young man was frightened and angry. "Didn't you see this piece of paper?" he shouted to Mr. Black. "Yes, I did," said Mr. Black. Then he went nearer, looked carefully at the paper and said, "Oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't see the word 'not.'"
Number 6. Mrs. Brown's old grandfather lived with her and her husband. Every morning he went for a walk in the park and came home at 12:30 for his lunch. But one morning a police car stopped outside Mrs. Brown's house at 12 o'clock, and 2 policemen helped Mr. Brown to get out. One of them said to Mrs. Brown, "The poor old gentleman lost his way in the park and telephoned to us for help, so we sent a car to bring him home." Mrs. Brown was very surprised, but she thanked the policeman, and they left. "But grandfather," she then said, "you've been to that park nearly every day for 20 years. How did you lose your way there?" The old man smiled, closed one eye, and said, "I didn't quite lose my way. I just got tired, and I didn't want to walk home."
Number 7. Helen's eyes were not very good, so she usually wore glasses. But when she was 17 and she began to go out with a young man, she never wore her glasses when she was with him. When he came to the door to take her out, she took her glasses off, and when she came home again and he left, she put them on. One day, her mother said to her, "But Helen, why do you never wear your glasses when you're with Jim? He takes you to beautiful places in his car, but you don't see anything." "Well, Mother," said Helen, "I look prettier to Jim when I'm not wearing my glasses, and he looks better to me, too."
Number 8. A man was trying to build an electric motor car. He worked in an office in the town during most of the week, but on Saturdays and Sundays he stayed at home in the country and worked on his electric car. Every Monday he told his friends at the office about his work on the car, but his news about it was never very good. Then at last, one Monday morning, he came to the office and said to his friends, "I've done it. I've driven from my home to here by electricity." His friends were all very glad. "How much did it cost to get here by electricity?" they asked. £302, he answered. £2 for the electricity and £300 for the electric wires from my house to the car.
Number 9. An artist went to a beautiful part of the country for a holiday and stayed with a farmer. Every day he went out with his paints and his brushes and painted from morning to evening. And then, when it got dark, he went back to the farm and had a good dinner before he went to bed. At the end of his holiday, he wanted to pay the farmer. But the farmer said, "No, I don't want money, but give me one of your pictures." "What is money? In a week it will all be finished, but your painting will still be here." The artist was very pleased and thanked the farmer for saying such kind things about his paintings. The farmer smiled and answered, "It's not that. I have a son in London. He wants to become an artist. When he comes here next month, I will show him your picture, and then he will not want to be an artist any more, I think."
Number 10. Mr. Jones was very angry with his wife, and she was very angry with her husband. For several days, they did not speak to each other at all. One evening, Mr. Jones was very tired when he came back from work, so he went to bed soon after dinner. Of course, he did not say anything to Mrs. Jones before he went upstairs. Mrs. Jones washed the dinner things and then did some sewing. When she went up to bed much later than her husband, she found a piece of paper on the small table near her bed. On it were the words, "Mother, wake me up at 7 a.m. Father." When Mr. Jones woke up the next morning, it was nearly 8 a.m., and on the small table near his bed, he saw another piece of paper. He took it and read these words, "Father, wake up. It is 7 a.m. Mother."
Number 11. The lights were red, so the old man stopped his car and waited for them to change to green. While he was waiting, a police car came up behind him, hit his car hard in the back, and stopped. There were 2 policemen in the police car, and they were very surprised and glad when the old man got out of his car and walked towards them without any trouble after such an accident. He was over 70 years old. The old man came to the door of the police car, smiled kindly, and said, "Tell me, young man, how do you stop this car when the lights are red and I'm not here?"
Number 12. Mrs. Williams loved flowers and had a small but beautiful garden. In the summer, her roses were always the best in her street. One summer afternoon, her bell rang, and when she went to the front door, she saw a small boy outside. He was about 7 years old and was holding a big bunch of beautiful roses in his hand. "I'm selling roses," he said. "Do you want any? They're quite cheap. 1 shilling for a big bunch. They're fresh. I picked them this afternoon." "My boy," Mrs. Williams answered, "I pick roses whenever I want and don't pay anything for them, because I've lots in my garden." "Oh, no, you haven't," said the small boy. "There aren't any roses in your garden, because they're here in my hand."
Number 13. A woman was having some trouble with her heart, so she went to see the doctor. He was a new doctor and did not know her, so he first asked some questions, and one of them was, "How old are you?" "Well," she answered, "I don't remember, doctor, but I will try to think." She thought for a minute and then said, "Yes, I remember now, doctor. When I married, I was 18 years old, and my husband was 30. Now my husband is 60, I know, and that is twice 30. So I am twice 18. That's 36, isn't it?"
Number 14. One day, Mrs. Jones went shopping. When her husband came home in the evening, she began to tell him about a beautiful cotton dress. "I saw it in a shop this morning," she said. And you want to buy it," said her husband. "How much does it cost?" £15. £15 for a cotton dress? That's too much. But every evening, when Mr. Jones came back from work, his wife continued to speak only about the dress, and at last, after a week, he said, "Oh, buy the dress. Here's the money." She was very happy. But the next evening, when Mr. Jones came home and asked, "Have you got the famous dress?" she said, "No." "Why not?" he said. "Well, it was still in the window of the shop after a week, so I thought, nobody else wants this dress, so I don't want it either."
Number 15. One day, a lady walked into a hat shop. The shopkeeper smiled and said, "Good afternoon, madam." "Good afternoon," the lady answered. "There's a green hat with red flowers and blue leaves on it in your window. Will you please take it out of there?" "Yes, madam," the shopkeeper said. "I'll be very pleased to do that for you." Usually, ladies looked at a lot of hats before they chose one, and the shopkeeper got very tired. "Good," he thought. "I'll sell this hat very quickly, and it's been in my window for a very long time." "Do you want it in a box, madam?" he asked, "or will you wear it?" "Oh, I don't want it," she answered. "I only wanted you to take it out of your window. I pass your shop every day, and I hate to see the ugly thing there."
Number 16. Nasruddin had a shed behind his house. It had no lights in it. One night, he went out to the shed to get his ladder and lost his ring there. He left the ladder, went out into the street, and began to look around. One of his friends saw him in the street outside his house and said to him, "Hello, Nasruddin. What are you looking for?" "My ring," answered Nasruddin. "It fell off my finger. It's a silver ring with a red stone in it." "Oh, yes," said his friend. "I remember it. I'll help you to look for it. Where did you lose it?" "In my shed." "But why don't you look for it there?" "Don't be stupid. It's quite dark in my shed, so how will I find my ring there? Here there's light from the lamps in the street."
Number 17. Mrs. Andrews had a young cat, and it was the cat's first winter. One evening it was outside when it began to snow heavily. Mrs. Andrews looked everywhere and shouted its name, but she did not find it. So she telephoned to the police and said, "I have lost a small black cat. Has anybody found one?" "No, madam," said the policeman at the other end. "But cats are really very strong animals. They sometimes live for days in the snow, and when it melts or somebody finds them, they are quite all right." Mrs. Andrews felt happier when she heard this, and she said, "Our cat is very clever. She almost talks." The policeman was getting rather tired. "Well then," he said, "why don't you put your telephone down? Perhaps she's trying to telephone you now."
Number 18. One morning, Nasruddin left his house with 6 donkeys to go to the market. After a time, he got tired and got on to one of them. He counted the donkeys, and there were only 5. So he got off and went to look for the 6. He looked and looked, but didn't find it. So he went back to the donkeys and counted them again. This time there were 6. So he got on to one of them again, and they all started. After a few minutes, he counted the donkeys again, and again there were only 5. While he was counting again, a friend of his passed, and Nasruddin said to him, "I left my house with 6 donkeys. Then I had 5. Then I had 6 again, and now I have only 5. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "But Nasruddin," said his friend, "you are sitting on a donkey too. That is the 6th, and you are the 7th.
Number 19. One of Nasruddin's friends loved money very much and never gave anything to anybody. Soon he became rich. One day he was walking near the river with his friends when he slipped and fell in. His friends ran to help him, and one of them knelt on the ground, held out his hand and said, "Give me your hand and I'll pull you out." The rich man's head went under the water and then came up again, but he didn't give his friend his hand. Again another of his friends tried, but again the same thing happened. Then Nasruddin said, "Take my hand and I'll pull you out." The rich man took his hand, and Nasruddin pulled him out of the water. "You don't know our friend very well," he said to the others. "When you say, 'give' to him, he does nothing. But when you say, 'take,' he takes."
Number 20. One day, Nasruddin bought a donkey in the market. But while he was taking it home, 2 thieves followed him. One of them took the rope from the donkey's neck and tied it round his friend's neck. Then he went away with the donkey. When Nasruddin got home, he turned and saw the young man. He was very surprised. "Where's my donkey?" he said angrily. "I'm very sorry," said the thief, "but once I said some very bad things to my mother, and she changed me into a donkey. But because a good man bought me, I'm now a man again. Thank you." Nasruddin untied the man and said, "Go, and never say bad things to your mother again." The next day, Nasruddin saw the same donkey in the market again. The other thief was selling it. Nasruddin went to it and said into its ear, "Young man, some people will never learn."
Number 21. Nasruddin wanted to buy some new clothes, so he went to a shop. First he asked for some trousers and put them on. But then he took them off and gave them back to the shopkeeper and said, "No, give me a coat instead of these." The man gave him a coat and said, "This one costs the same as the trousers." Nasruddin took the coat and walked out of the shop with it. The shopkeeper ran after him and said, "You have not paid for that coat." "But I gave you the trousers for the coat," said Nasruddin. "They cost the same as the coat, didn't they?" "Yes," said the shopkeeper, "but you didn't pay for the trousers either." "Of course I didn't," answered Nasruddin. "I didn't take them. I'm not stupid. Nobody gives things back and then pays for them."
Number 22. One day, the boys of Nasruddin's village said to him, "You have a nice fat sheep. Will you invite us to a party to eat it with you?" Nasruddin did not want the boys to eat his sheep, so he said, "It's not fat enough yet." "But have you not heard?" they said. "The world is going to end tomorrow, so the sheep will never get fat." Nasruddin was getting tired of this, so he said, "All right, boys, we will have a picnic tomorrow and eat the sheep." So the next morning they all went to the river. The boys took off their clothes and jumped into the water, and Nasruddin killed the sheep. When the boys came out, their clothes were not there. "Where are our clothes, Nasruddin?" they asked. "Oh," he answered, "I made the fire to cook the sheep with your clothes. You will not need them again. The world is going to end today. Don't you remember?"
Number 23. Whenever it rained, water came through Nasruddin's roof. So one day he got his ladder, climbed up onto the roof, and began to mend it. It was quite difficult and dangerous work. While he was up there, he suddenly saw an old man in the street. This man was waving to him. He wanted Nasruddin to come down. Nasruddin thought, "What has happened? What news has this man got for me?" So he climbed down the ladder quickly. Several times he slipped and nearly broke his neck. When he got to the bottom, the old man said, "I'm a poor man. Please give me some money." Nasruddin was very angry, but he said, "Come up." He helped the old man to climb up the ladder and onto the roof. Then he said to him, "I am a poor man too. I have no money for you. And now go down alone. I will not help you."
Number 24. One day, Mr. Robinson saw a lady in the street with 10 children. He was very surprised because all the children were wearing the same clothes: white caps, dark blue coats, and grey trousers. "Are all those children yours?" he asked the mother. "Yes, they are," she answered. "Do you always dress them in the same clothes?" asked Mr. Robinson. "Yes," answered the mother. "When we had only 4 children, we dressed them in the same clothes because we didn't want to lose any of them. It was easy to see our children when they were among other children, because they were all wearing the same clothes. And now, when we have 10, we dress them like this because we don't want to take other children home too by mistake. When there are other children among ours, it's easy to see them because their clothes are different."
Number 25. Mr. and Mrs. Brown lived in a small house near London with their child. Sometimes Mr. Brown came back from work very late, when his wife and the child were asleep, and then he opened the front door of his house with his key and came in very quietly. But one night when he was coming home late, he lost his key. So when he reached his house, he rang the bell. Nothing happened. He rang it again. Again nothing happened. Nobody moved inside the house. Mr. Brown knocked at the bedroom window. He spoke to his wife. He shouted, but she did not wake up. At last he stopped and thought for a few seconds. Then he began to speak like a small child. "Mother," he said, "I want to go to the lavatory." He spoke quite quietly, but at once Mrs. Brown woke up. Then he spoke to her, and she opened the door for him.
Number 26. Peter's uncle lived in the country. Once Peter went to stay with him for a few weeks. Whenever they went for a walk or for a drive in the car and they passed somebody, his uncle waved. Peter was surprised and said, "Uncle George, you know everybody here. Where did you meet them all?" "I don't know all these people," said his uncle. "Then why do you wave to them?" asked Peter. "Well, Peter," answered his uncle, "when I wave to someone and he knows me, he is pleased. He continues his journey with a happier heart. But when I wave to someone and he doesn't know me, he is surprised and says to himself, 'Who is that man? Why did he wave to me?' So he has something to think about during the rest of his journey, and that makes his journey seem shorter. So I make everybody happy."
Number 27. It was a beautiful spring morning. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sun was warm but not too hot. So Mr. Andrews was surprised when he saw an old gentleman at the bus stop with a big, strong black umbrella in his hand. Mr. Andrews said to him, "Are we going to have rain today, do you think?" "No," said the old gentleman, "I don't think so." "Then are you carrying the umbrella to keep the sun off you?" No, the sun isn't very hot in spring. Mr. Andrews looked at the big umbrella again, and the gentleman said, I'm an old man and my legs are not very strong, so I really need a walking stick. But when I carry a walking stick, people say, look at that poor old man, and I don't like that. When I carry an umbrella in fine weather, people only say, look at that stupid man.
Number 28. Many years ago, an English family were living in China. One evening, an important Chinese officer came to visit them. It got later and later, and he still didn't go, so his hostess invited him to have dinner with them. But she had very little food in the house, so she quickly went to the kitchen and spoke to her Chinese cook. He said, "It's all right, you'll have a very good dinner." When they all sat down to eat, the lady was very surprised, because there was a lot of very good food on the table. After the dinner, the hostess ran to the kitchen and said to the cook, "How did you make such a good meal in half an hour?" "I didn't make it, madam," he said. "I sent one of the servants to the Chinese officer's house and brought back the Chinese officer's dinner."
Number 29. One day, Nasruddin went to a big dinner party. He was wearing old clothes, and when he came in, nobody looked at him, and nobody gave him a seat at a table. So Nasruddin went home, put on his best clothes, and then went back to the party. The host at once got up and came to meet him. He took him to the best table, gave him a good seat, and offered him the best dishes. Nasruddin put his coat in the food and said, "Eat, coat." The other guests were very surprised and said, "What are you doing?" Nasruddin answered, "I was inviting my coat to eat. When I was wearing my old clothes, nobody looked at me or offered me food or drink. Then I went home and came back in these clothes, and you gave me the best food and drink. So you gave me these things for my clothes, not for myself."
Number 30. Nasruddin wanted a big pot for a party, so he borrowed one from a neighbor. After the party, he took it back with another small pot inside. "Your pot had a baby while it was with us," he said. Of course the neighbor was very pleased, and when Nasruddin came to borrow the big pot again for another party, he lent it to him very gladly. This time, Nasruddin did not bring the pot back, so after a few days, the man went to Nasruddin's house. "What has happened to my big pot?" he asked. "Why haven't you brought it back yet?" "Oh, the big pot," said Nasruddin. "It died while it was with us." "Died?" said the neighbor angrily. "But pots do not die." "Why do you say that?" answered Nasruddin. "When I said the pot has had a baby, you did not say pots do not have babies, did you?"
Number 31.